Hello. Hello, Periscope. I'm Christine Williamson. Last weekend, I went down to the Boston Theater Marathon, and I suppose I should. Hello, Ruhi, Ali. Hello. Welcome. 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 So last week, I went down to the Boston Theater Marathon, and I thought that I would say what I saw while I was down there. So what the Boston Theater Marathon is it's a weekend. On Saturday there are readings of plays, 3 full-length and a bunch of little short ones in between. And then on Sunday, 50 theater companies in the Boston area present 50 short plays by New England playwrights in a course of 10 hours. It's a lot of theater. I watched all of it. So I thought that I would say what I thought of all of it, since it's rare to see so many different artists being showcased all at once on a single day, on a single weekend. At least for me, it's rare. So what do I look for when I go to see theater? I look for stories that move me, and acting that moves me. And I look for stories where the company's presenting the story using all the different elements that are available in the theater. Like making use of lighting and scenic design, and well, there's not a huge when you've only got a minute to switch between plays, there's not always you get a little limited with the options for scene design on a marathon like this, but you can make use of lighting and such. And in terms of acting, what I look for is veracity and clarity of emotion. If I believe that, I want to believe that the actor is experiencing what they are presenting. Not sure whether that makes, how to explain that better, but veracity and clarity of emotion. So 50 short plays. I guess I'll just go through which ones were my highlights for the 10-minute plays. Quack. I'm gonna say that I think my favorite prize, my prize for favorite short play went to Quack, and not that this is really a contest. This is all my opinion. I'm not associated with anybody. I'm not associated with the Boston Playwrights Theater. I'm just a actor, playwright, poet. This is my opinion. But Quack was tight. The story was very well put together, very moving, and it had a very strong cast. Ella Borders, who played the duck, she was really, really amazing. She was in one of the readings on Saturday as well, and she moved me profoundly on both days. So that's why I'm singling her out. But Quack was very well done. It was by, I got this list of 50, it was by Patrick Gabridge and sponsored by the Sleeping Weasel. Another play that really stood out for me was Placebo Controls, and in some ways I'm kind of amused by the plays that I connected with this year because many of them involved animals. Placebo Controls was about 2 laboratory mice, and just the portrayal of the mice. If you've ever worked with laboratory mice, and I have in the past, it was just like, that is what you see sometimes when you walk by a cage. It was like one hyperactive mouse with neuroses that's just like bouncing all over the place, and another in the background that's sedate, and they're like very genetically similar because all the differences have been bred out of them specifically for the purposes of experimentation. Yet you still get these just contrasts, even though they're so closely related. But that one, the actors did a really good job. Kelly Chick and Melissa Jesser. They were just, it was like, yeah, that's what what a laboratory mouse is like. And the story also contained the message of what is, that you don't have to be labeled as important by some arbitrary person somewhere in order to live a fulfilling life, because these mice turned out to be the placebo controls, and so they weren't special or anything like that. And that brings me back to the message of Quack, because it wasn't just that the acting was amazing, which it was the story. The good acting allowed the story to bring out the quality of how to put this into words. How, when we say something, when we tell something or someone that they shouldn't be able to do something, that this is what they're supposed to do instead, how that can prevent them from fulfilling their full potential. How what we say when somebody really values what we tell them, how we have to be careful what we say because you can ruin or repress something that would otherwise be very beautiful and amazing. The story from Quack was a duck who, the duck is telling the story basically, and they were hatched by this person, so they imprinted on them and followed them around and just having and this person was a scholar, a professor, and he carried the duck around in his pocket when he was going to classes and stuff. But they'd have meaningful conversations, and the duck went everywhere with him. And like they were actually talking, and the duck was giving opinions and eating with spoons and everything. And then at the end, I should probably say there are big spoilers in this broadcast. In the end, the student has gotten a job as a professor, and he can't take the duck with him. But instead of telling the duck that the duck can't go with him, he tells them that they're a duck, and that ducks can't eat Cheerios with spoons, and ducks can't wear shoes, and ducks can't do all these things. And and the duck listens, and because the duck loves him, she stops doing the things that she was doing and becomes a duck, even though she doesn't. There really isn't a reason for it because it was good, or well, not that there isn't a reason for it, but he told her that she was lesser, and so she became lesser at the end. And one of the very last things that he said is, "Ducks can't speak. Ducks say quack." And so after he leaves, that's the very last thing that the duck gives up, is her voice, the power of speech. And so her last line is, after telling this amazingly eloquent story and this beautiful emotional tragedy at the end, just quack is the last word of the play. And it was incredibly powerful and done very, very well. Okay, so that's why I liked Quack. Some of the other, I want to give notable mention also to Thesis. Thesis was one of the plays that made big effective use of sound and lighting in this limited opportunity to do so. And it also had really good acting. And the actors were Angela James, Sam Buntich, and Carla Martinez. But it was hilarious. It had the funniest moment for me. It had the absolute funniest moment. Just when one of the two main characters summon a goddess, and there was just bam, lighting, sound, and it was hilarious, and I was just in stitches. I'm not entirely sure how to explain that one as well as I can explain Quack, but it was very well done. That was by John King, sponsored by the Speakeasy Stage Company. That one was really good. And another one that made use of the theatrical space was Houston by Off the Grid Theater Company. I like Off the Grid Theater Company. They did the yellow wallpaper last year, and not at the marathon, and they did Equus a month ago, and that was good. I like their style a lot. So Houston was two astronauts with very stereotypical accents, Texas and New Jersey, I think the other one was. And so they're up and they're about in this space pod, and it's going to self-destruct. And then then another part of the stage would have appeared, Mission Control, but Mission Control had been outsourced to India. and so the Mission Control would appear and disappear and such, and it was the same person, but it was funny and it was well done. And it got into it was playing with stereotypes. It's like, yes, there are stereotypes, but then there is a person beneath the stereotype. So it started off with they get Mission Control, and oh no, it's been outsourced to India. They're going to be doomed because they can't get through the, like, have you plugged it in? Have you unplugged it? Have you restarted things? But yes, the guy on the other end of the phone actually does know his job, and he was kind of yanking their chain a bit. But so that was Christopher Webb, Jessica Webb, and Zaven Ovian. Off the Grid Theater Company, directed by Alexis Shear. And that was funny. Jessica Webb did a good job. She also read in for an actor in another play who had an emergency, and she did a good job just picking up the book, and she must have she didn't have a whole lot of preparation there, I would imagine, and she still did a really good job. Let's see. Is this a web viewer? Feel free to ask me anything. I think if you tweet at me, I would get a notification. I'm going to try to post this to YouTube later. Let's see. What else was really... Oh! The Rags was really good. The Rags... When plays try to make a political commentary, I get picky about this because I still want to be moved by the human elements of the story. I don't want just to have an argument sort of yammered at me, or that's something in theater and in pretty much all writing is always show, don't tell. Show, don't tell. Telling gets boring. Things tell us stuff all the time. We're always being shouted at by ads and people on the news who want us to agree with them or not agree with them or aren't really stuff like that. I want to see the human effect, the human elements in the story that make this an important issue, not just because somebody's saying that it's an important issue and they're using this medium of presenting, of people having conversations as a vehicle for their political platform. So this one was really good. It was The Rags, and I'm gonna say that I don't like the name. This is a pet peeve of mine for short plays, especially, and especially when you're seeing a lot of them at once. Make the name of your play relevant to the entirety of the play, not just a play on one line, because it doesn't help me later on figure out what that play was about. If I didn't make good notes next to the name of the play, and the name doesn't help me remember what it was, I'm not gonna remember. If I hadn't written down next to this one how awesome it was and what it was about, I would have no way of knowing from the name that this was a play that I really, really liked. And then, of course, I would not remember the people associated with it. So, The Rags by William Oram, directed by Anne Lucas. And it was about the privatization of healthcare, making it is sort of going further into the future where medical care is basically being passed off to nurse practitioners unless you can pay extra fees on top of whatever you were paying before in order to be on the doctor's list. And so it was a doctor having a conversation with the patient who can't afford to switch to this new plan, even though they've been seeing the doctor for like their entire life, or 20 years or something like that. And the ultimate, when the characters and the emotional issue becomes symbolic and acquires a symbolic power, that is something that really resonates with me. And when it got to the end, the patient still couldn't pay, but it became a portrait of how less affluent people, poor people, people in poverty, are forced to prostitute themselves to maintain and hold on to basic services that really should be accessible to anyone, and that are becoming the privilege of the people with money. In this case, health care. She couldn't pay to get on the list, and at the very end, she basically trades sex to be given a spot on the list, and the doctor agrees. But again, at the end, it was shown and implied more than it was explicitly stated. Like, prostitution was never mentioned. It was the subtext within the lines and the action of the characters. That's something that I want to mention. Play for writers, when you're writing for the stage, use the silence of your actors. You're not just putting words in their mouths, you're putting emotions in their heads and creating body language with that. They will do that. They will give you more than just the words that you want them to speak. So don't be afraid of not explicitly stating something. Letting the actors do it through subtext and body language and silent, nonverbal interactions with each other. So there's my little soapbox for that. So the rags had a good bit there. I'm noticing that I put a big circle and an exclamation point next to a story called Orphans by Richard Bowen. That was a fun story, very fun story about basically serial theft of baby Jesuses from mangers over the course of multiple years. Around Christmas time. And it was basically this police officer who's been traumatized by what he discovered while looking into this, being debriefed by his commanding officer, who was not happy that he didn't bring the perpetrator in. It was funny. It was really funny. Let's see. What else did I put? Queen of Hearts by Gail Hanrahan. That's got big brackets around it. Queen of Hearts was very tight, very well done, very good acting. It was self-contained, but it felt like it had the potential to become a longer story. But it was also fine the way it was. And I like stuff like that. As opposed to another one that was near the end of the evening, A Fable Regarding the Octopus. I felt like it was the beginning of something long, and it didn't actually resolve. It was really interesting, though, and I was like, okay, what's going on? And then it didn't successfully resolve for me. So I felt like it was just the beginning of a longer... I felt like it was an excerpt, like a prologue to something. Let's see, what else got brackets? I liked the Park Slope Minstrel Show by Fresh Ink Theater Company. Well, presented by Fresh Ink Theater Company by Eleanor Burgess. It was a family who discovered their kids playing Harriet Tubman in blackface out in their yard, and the kids have no idea the implications of the game that they were playing, and the parents are mortified that the neighbors may have seen them playing it, and so then it became the parents getting into this really awkward, intense discussion that ends up yelling at them, and the kids coming in and seeing that at the end, not how I guess in a way it was, if I can't figure out exactly what the message was, I suppose that suggests it was unfocused, but I think it was the complexity of race issues and how we deal with them in terms of teaching them in school, and because they were supposed to be elementary school kids. Hmm. Yeah. Just how things get not necessarily blown out of proportion, but can people are just confused by it and get into these big arguments. Not that they shouldn't get into big arguments, but I'm not describing my reaction to this well. I'm not capturing what was presented very well. I'll go on to a different one. Maybe I'll come back to that. Let's see. What else? Ooh, this one was really good. Life's Half a Glass. There's three really good actors: Sarah Newhouse, Maureen Kyler, Dorothy Dwyer. I don't know if I'm pronouncing their names right. Charleston Working Theater, directed by Darren Evans. Life's Half a Glass by Rick Park. It was basically three older, sort of almost but not quite redneck women on Thanksgiving Eve, sitting out in collapsible soccer chairs, commiserating about their life, and they were so funny. They were so good. And one of them, their son had come out a while back, and she hadn't told her friends yet that he was gay, and they were like, "It's all right." And so, but it was really funny. Those three did a really good job. Swig by Ronan Noon, sponsored by Centa Stage. I'm going to mention this one because I don't want to only talk about things that I like. I mean, this was very well done. It was well written. The acting was really good. It was very, very well executed, and I hated every second of it. It's exactly the sort of writing that's like the antithesis of what I want to do with my poetry. But it was very, very well done. That was Swig. It was like, oh, the depressing nature of life. I had this awful thing that I did in an irresponsible moment by accident. Maybe it was just an accident. And now, at the end of it, I'm going to kill myself, or something like that. Although, I don't think he actually did, or the play ended before he did, but he definitely stuck a gun in his mouth at the end, or was talking about sticking a gun in his mouth. It was I don't know what to call it. It was a poem story, a modern poem story that, in the sort of style that's just the sort of droning, depressing image after depressing image, and it's not my cup of tea, but it was very, very well done. as was Officer Friendly by Larry Cohen. And Donna Sorbella and Mark St. Pierre did really good jobs with that. The Wheelock Family Theater, directed by Linda Robinson. That one was very good. That one had some humor in it as well. It was a police officer who returns to the religious school that he attended to talk to the nun who'd been his teacher, and she's in a class, and so he ends up talking to the class, and it becomes revealed that he's there because he wants forgiveness for a civilian shooting that took place. And so in this way, there's the looking for a way to go on and potentially finding it, as opposed to the other one where the person doesn't seem to find it. But it was very well done, and yeah. And so was The Interview by Stephen Bogart, which is where we get into the animals theme again, because this was like the chicken play. It was sponsored by the Actors Shakespeare Project, directed by Judy Braha, and it was well done. It was an actor comes in interviewing for a teaching job, teaching theater at an elementary school, and as part of the interview, they're asked to act a chicken, and they hadn't been told that they were supposed to prepare something, and they're all offended by the chicken thing, but it was eventually they do it, and they get the entire interview committee into it. It was just the way it was done, the caricature of the different actors, the interview committee, and like they would just look. Dun, 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 dun. It was just, the comedic timing was great, and it was fun to see a whole bunch of people doing really good impersonations of chickens on a stage. Oh dear. I think I'm going to move on to the readings. Who's there? Is there? It says that there's still people here. I don't know if I can tell who's there. A web view. Whoops! Ah, as I fall over. Whee! Let's see. So on Saturday there were readings, and there were three full-length readings. The third one was very tight. It was very, of the three of them, I would say it was the closest to being ready to be actually put on a stage. Uploaded by Gregory Fletcher. And the acting was very well done in a reading. And actually, one of the actors was in the Off the Grid, the Houston. He was Mission Control, the outsourced space flight call there. So I got to see him twice. That was nice. I like being able to compare performances. I uploaded sure what to say about uploaded. Like in terms of specificity, I don't want to like just spoil the story. But it was a pair of older women who'd lost their husbands recently, and they were very good friends, and basically they move in together, and over the course of the play, one of their grandsons comes to live with them, and they learn how to, or they start helping each other start living again, basically, and reaching out with learning how to use new technology and finding ways to meaningfully affect life, despite having felt like it had left them behind for a while. Ant. Bye, Ant. And it was funny. I think there were some places where it could be trimmed near the end. I felt like it had 3 endings almost, like it started to end 3 times. So I think that the last like half hour is probably where you'd want to go in and poke a bit there. The second one, The King of Love is Dead by Liana Assim? I don't know how to pronounce her name. Sponsored by Company One. That had this one has the potential to be really awesome. is what I'm going to start off by saying there. Very very theatrical in terms of what's going to be going on the stage, because there's like a narrator who's an older version of the younger version of himself, and you've got voices chiming in with various things going on in the background, illustrating the narration. And it started off with this really sort of powerful rhythm that was creating images and building the emotional and rhythmic structure of the story, and started off really, really well like that. And then it got to a place where they started talking about hair, different hairstyles, and the rhythm hiccuped. And I think that part of that could probably be trimmed off to keep and that would do it. But then after that, it was the same sort of hiccup. So like the rhythm would start, and then it would fall away and start and fall away. And I think what I would say for this one is the show don't tell, because this one was adapted from a book. I've not read the book, so I don't know what ambiance was trying to be recreated. But I know that when you're writing, or when I'm writing, the temptation is always to use words to fix things. When you're a writer and you're writing a book, that's all that you have, unless you have an illustrator working with you. So when you've got a writer and a playwright, there's 2 temptations there to fix things with words. But I'm going to say for this one, you need to trim some out and leave it to the actors. And a perfect example of what I'm talking about is the very end of the play. the very last line, where the young version of the main characters gets one of the characters who had been sort of bullying him in ways, like usually the power in the relationship was with that other person, but he manages to get the upper hand by telling him that the zombie's coming. That if he doesn't let him do it, he'll tell him where the zombies live, which makes sense in the context of the play, even though it sounds really random right here. But because of what had been set up earlier, and the way that character just basically backs down and the main character basically succeeds in this. Seeing that other characters change, emotional shift, and the backing down, and the other taking the dominant spot in the power of the relationship at that particular moment, is far more powerful than adding on the verbal back end of that line, which was basically the younger character started gloating a bit, and for the ending note of the play, it's much more powerful to end on that visual present shift instead of adding unnecessary chatter over it. So taking that idea and using that to trim out pieces in this, in the middle and parts of this play, I think that's what this one needs. But it's good. It's got some really good potential in there. The actress Elle Borders that I mentioned earlier, who was in Quack, she was also in this, and she has a beautiful singing voice. Oh my gosh, there's music in it, church music, and she got to sing that. So I'll sing her praises again. Oh, Elle Borders is awesome. And then the other reading, the last one, which was actually the first one that was done, Hair of the Dog by Constance Congdon. And I'm really torn on what I should say about this one. I like the idea of writing a play in, I mean, it was a comedy. It is a comedy. And I like the idea of writing a play that's almost entirely, if not entirely, I would have to actually look at the script, in iambic pentameter, because I plan on doing that at some point. But I don't. I like the idea, but I don't know if I actually like it. I guess it was Shakespeare right after Marlowe has died. I mean, aside from the fact that it was riddled with tons of obscure Shakespeare, Marlowe in things that an audience that's not familiar with those details of history, assuming that's the school of theory that you follow anyway in terms of Shakespeare and Marlowe. But for an average American audience, all those little sort of in-joke references are are going to be completely lost. You're sad to say we're not horribly, we're not excessively educated in those things, in Marlowe's and Shakespeare's history, unfortunately. So all those are going to be lost, which means that the average audience is, you're going to have to rely on the more obvious slapstick, well, not really, well, in some cases slapstick, or the more obvious comedic and story elements to connect with the audience. And I'm not sure that I mean, the story was okay. It wasn't terribly impressive, but it was like, Marlowe's just died, Shakespeare's depressed about it, Marlowe comes back as a ghost and haunts him, doesn't know why that he's not completely dead yet. And then Marlowe's sisters show up one by one, and there's 3 of them. So then you get weird references to tie into Shakespeare's plays, like the Weird Sisters, and one of them dresses as a guy. So then it's like, oh, yeah, Shakespeare writes about girls dressing up as guys a lot. So it throws in stuff like that. I mean, lots of stuff that a more common man audience isn't necessarily going to get. And it plays with the iambic pentameter, and I like the idea of that. And sometimes it makes fun of it. But there were times when I couldn't tell whether it was making fun of itself, whether it was making fun of the verse, or whether this was one of the places where it was supposed to be taken seriously. So in that case, of course, I work with iambic pentameter a lot, so I'm very picky there. But parts of it were very, very funny. And other parts I was like, how is that relevant? But it's a comedy, so the things have to be relevant. And there was all sorts of atheist and heaven-hell philosophy thrown into it. It was amusing. It was amusing. But my biggest thing, I don't know what my biggest thing is, actually. It annoyed me that Shakespeare almost never said anything eloquent. The majority of the long, intricate speeches were Christopher Marlowe, but the two actors did a good job. Paul Melendi and Ed Hoopman, they did a good job. I felt like the female characters were very stereotypical. But for what they were also well done. It always makes me sad when a female playwright writes stereotypical female characters. Basically, this one I would want to see really polished more and figure out what the message, other than just let's crack jokes and have fun with iambic pentameter. I want to see a meaning coming out of it. I mean, unless the point is that there wasn't a meaning. But Shakespeare's last line was ditto, and that made me sad. Like, that's what he said, ditto. That was the last line of the play. And that made me very sad, although I suspect it was supposed to be funny. But yeah, so that's what my impression there was. It's funny because since I work with iambic pentameter a lot, like when his moment came to say something at the very end, when they'd finally put Marlowe to rest, my silence best becomes the death of words, is what immediately flew to the top of my mind. And then he said ditto, and I was just sad. But my silence best becomes the death of words is what I would have had Shakespeare say. Of course, I probably would have written a slightly more serious play. But it was fun, and apparently they only had 2 rehearsals, so they did a good job. But thank you for listening to me talk about what I like and thought was fun about the theater marathon. And if you have any questions or want to talk about plays, I'm happy to engage in that sort of chat. Because that's the sort of thing I love talking about. So thank you for sticking with me, and my plan is to put this up on YouTube and see what people think. So I will sign off, and thank you for listening.